Hey folks, Papa Boris here reviewing the final 3-player game to finish in the 4th stage of the 2025 Through the Ages World Championship. Now, most of the time when I review a game, I kind of view it through my lens and focus on myself as a player, but in this game, we're going to take a little bit more of a different approach. I'm going to focus a lot on Parsley, because I think that Parsley played a very interesting game without spoiling how it ends. One person commented that Parsley, the very dominant leader of this group, seems to make the game look easy, where they just play really solid, really efficient, very clean turns. This game, I think he did some pretty kooky stuff, so let's pay attention to it and see how it turns out. Kicking things off, he grabs Confucius, which is a very strong leader, and I think for many players, the obvious pick from this board. I similarly make a pretty obvious pick. I'm going to grab the Library. It's the only wonder on the table, and it's one of the best wonders in the game, so it seems kind of weird not to take it, so very simple move for me. And I was wondering if David was going to grab the Engineering Genius, because he likes doing that, or Hammurabi, which I think is actually the correct play here. And as we'll see, he chooses to get Engineering Genius and Frugality, a couple of rocks and a food. I do think it's better to grab Hammurabi here. This is almost undisputedly like the best, one of the best, if not the best, Age A leaders. And it may seem odd, be like, oh, well, I'm only getting 1 card for my 3 actions instead of 2, but that is psychological. Like, when Parsley got Confucius as his 1 card, that's good. If you get Hammurabi as your 1 card, that's good too. Yes, you're the 3rd player, and maybe, yes, you could have gotten more, but that's actually part of the value of being 3rd. It isn't just that you get multiple actions worth of cards, but that you have access to this row that other people don't have access to. So I think that would have been the play there, but he decides to go for the resources, and we're over to the first turn of the game. Alright, so Parsley grabs Confucius, makes a mine, raises population, takes an urban growth. I don't think anyone would have done anything different there. We're going to pass the turn. On my turn, I was very happy that Hammurabi is there, so I imagine Parsley was annoyed that David left that for me, so I get Hammurabi, make a mine, raise population. Now I have an extra action, and for that I take a free rock. Very straightforward. Don't know a lot of people would play differently there. And we go over to David. So David plays Frugality, makes a mine, grabs Aristotle. There's no value to playing Aristotle right away, so it makes sense that he also then takes the Colossus. And now you'll notice that Parsley, through no fault of his own, doesn't get a wonder in Age A. And it wasn't like the way that David did it, where he would kind of force it. Parsley just wasn't offered one, and then he never got one in the 1 action area on his turns. So he's playing without an Age A wonder. Oops, let's get back over here. There we go. So what is he going to do? Well, he plays an event with Confucius, obviously. He's going to every time. We get 2 science, and that's obviously very nice because he also gets Code of Laws here for 1 action, 2nd card off of the Age 1 deck. Pretty nice stroke of luck for him. He also grabs the Theocracy, makes an urban growth, and pops off the consumption right away. There wasn't much else to do with his actions. Now, the Theocracy is a little bit strange, but on the other hand, what exactly else was there for him to do? Patriotism is not exactly the most inspiring Age 1 card. He could, instead of taking Theocracy and raising population, have taken Isabella or Swordsman, perhaps. That's probably what I would have done, but I think this turn is actually very reasonable as well. And we go over to me. So on my turn, I build a lab, and I wasn't really sure how to spend all my actions here. Looking back, I think you just gotta take a simple line here, grab some iron maybe. You could even take iron and breakthrough, just together. I think that's a perfectly fine turn. You could take iron and Isabella, for 3 actions, and then for your 4th action, either just play the Frugality and go into consumption, grab a growth or a reserves. There's a lot of things to do, but I take a pretty weird line here. I take the iron and I take Isabella, but then I decide to play her. So I give up the extra action from Hammurabi for the extra rock from Isabella. I don't think that's actually correct, because I think an extra action is worth more than a rock. Granted, it also means it opens up a military action, but I think that this is a little bit premature. I also grabbed the reserves. Probably could have considered taking Swordsman here. It's nice to have those in a 3-player game, but I wanted the extra resources here so that next turn I could definitely finish the wonder if there was, or make 2 mine upgrades if nothing more pressing came up. And just to be clear, I could have done that with Hammurabi. I would have been 1 rock short of building the wonder, because part of the rocks that I'm getting to finish this right now are from the reserves and from the rocks. But again, even considering that, let's say it lets you get 2 iron mines right away, I think exchanging Hammurabi immediately like this is a little bit premature. All right, so David grabs another engineering genius. He raises population going into consumption, and he builds another lab. So he hasn't taken any science cards yet, so he hasn't played Aristotle yet. Personally here, I would have preferred to, instead of taking engineering genius, play Aristotle and grab swordsman or breakthrough. I think, and also you could do both and just not open up this consumption. I think that's what I would have done. I would have played Aristotle, swordsman, breakthrough. I think breakthrough on one action is just ridiculously good. And yes, engineering genius is sexy with the Colossus because you can actually use the full value of the 3 rocks, but you already have one engineering genius, 1 rock off the top, and you can finish the Colossus immediately. It's not a wonder that really needs to be rushed anyway. It doesn't actually do anything. The strength does nothing, the colonization does nothing until the event deck flips over. And you're not doing any aggressions on anybody with this, just the Colossus. So I don't know if that it's worth getting this. I think I'm happy just building it with engineering genius A. So Parsley's up, plays an event, we get more cards, and he's never gotten a wonder, so he grabs St. Peter's. Now this is one of those things I probably wouldn't do because, you know, you only have 3 rocks per turn, and it's a wonder that's very vulnerable to Ravages of Time, and it's a culture wonder, it doesn't give you any resources, but on the other hand, it is a wonder. He could use a wonder, and I think this works out very well for him. You know, if you get it and it sticks and doesn't get ravaged over time away, it does fix your happy faces for the rest of the game and gives you an early culture lead. So a bold move by Parsley, one that I don't think I would have seen, and it was instructive for me because I think this ends up being pretty good. He also grabs the breakthrough that David left behind, of course, researches Code of Laws, of course, and builds the first stage. He now has a little bit of an awkward situation here with just the 3 rocks and the next stage costing 6, but he grabs the irrigation to use as food or just to have as a backup in case he can't get selective breeding, and then he passes the turn. So it's over to me. I don't play an event. I stick with my plan so you can see why I got Isabella. I research iron, I play the reserves, and now with 6 rocks, I would have had 5 if it had just been Hammurabi, I can actually upgrade both mines. So I'm really pushing for the early economy here. And that's my whole turn, so we go over to David. So David plays an event, we get planning. Now the options for planning are a free warrior, 2 rocks, or a free action. David goes with the action and raises population. He takes the knights, takes irrigation, gets the Colossus started, and then he also puts down an early Legion to go with the Knights, which is kind of weird, but maybe he had stuff he wanted to hold on to and just wanted to have the Legion just in case as a backup. And then he pitches, keeps those 2 cards, and we go over to Parsley. So Parsley plays an event. We get 2 food or 2 rocks. He chooses the rocks, which is a really nice turn for him because it allows him to finish St. Peter's. So now with the Theocracy that he took, the St. Peter's has given him a ton of happy faces, which don't matter at the moment, but also 3 culture per turn. So he's going to start building a culture lead very, very early in this game. Now he grabs Nostradamus and the Knights. So it's a very instructive 2-pronged approach here. You get the early culture, you're kind of sacrificing your economy, but you get Nostradamus and Knights for safety. So your opponents can't punish you for getting the early culture lead, and with that in place and your happy faces taken care of, you can now focus entirely on fixing up your economy. My turn, I grab the Code of Laws, build the Wonder, and that's my turn. I would do it again. I think this is very strong. The Wonder gives me just enough science to make it next turn. I'm a happy camper. Now David makes a very significant turn here. He plays an event. We get a free population, and I will rue that free population that we got. Because thanks to this, now with Engineering Genius 1, he does get to finish the Colossus, make a warrior, and another warrior, and get this Legion going and have 7 strength. If it wasn't for the free population, he wouldn't have been able to do this. So that is an unfortunate turn because now I don't get the breathing room I was expecting to have of an extra turn to get down my Code of Laws. He also takes and researches Monarchy, grabs Swordsman for the future. He's going all in on the military thing. So Parsley's up, plays an event. We lose some science. By we, I mean not Parsley, me and David. He then plays Nostradamus, so he is completely cozy, has got no issues with David doing David stuff over here. He raises population, makes a warrior, makes another warrior, grabs the breakthrough for 1 action again, which is very sad to see, takes a rich land to go with the irrigation or possibly iron later, researches the irrigation, and grabs a rich land. So now he can upgrade his farms very easily, Notice he does not go crazy taking Taj Mahal. He's fine with just the St. Peter's, and he's focusing on economical value. Now, here he could have taken the Alchemy instead of the Rich Lands, but I think it's totally fine the way he played it, because there is another copy of Alchemy in the deck if that's what he wants, and this allows him to get his food going right away. He has his own Legion from the hand, so he's actually very, very safe on strength. In fact, he's not even the weakest with this setup. So now I take the Warfare and I play it, which I did not want to do. I would have much rather played Code of Laws, but with Parsley and David both going up this high, it felt like going the Code of Laws route was unthinkable. Now, I do get to make a Warrior and grab a Fighting Band, but without the Warfare, I would be at 3 strength and 2 actions. So Parsley and David could both do aggressions on me, and I thought about it. You know, there's a case to be made for risking it, but it just didn't seem palatable. Note that there is no raising population, building another warrior, because it's the Warfare giving me the extra action. If I make a warrior and get the Fighting Band down, that's it. That's all my military actions. I raise population to get out of corruption, and then I build my final mine. So it's a bit of an interesting move. I choose not to take the Alchemy here. You know, you'd think that that would help, considering I have this Code of Laws I want to research. And maybe that would have been worth holding off this mine, because I already have very good rucks. Maybe I could even have considered trying to get Masonry and Alchemy, although that's starting to rack up a bit of science debt. Alright, so it's over to David. With 3 military actions now, I am safe. He's not going to aggress upon me. He researches Swordsman, grabs Saladin, grabs Alchemy, and Theology. With this final Hall of Science from Aristotle, he throws out Aristotle, which makes sense because it was the last time in the age to do that, and he makes a temple. He just builds one, which is interesting. It maybe means that, you know, something like Rebellion is in the deck, because it is a little bit of a curious move. On the other hand, maybe he just didn't have anything else to do. He needed to get out of corruption, and he couldn't build a lab because then they would have been in revolt. So it's not necessarily a tell that Rebellion is in there. Now, what I was unhappy to see is that he upgraded 1 swordsman, 2 swordsmen, and all 3 swordsmen. Now, this is not necessarily wrong, because you do want to do this and stop your draws in Age 1 instead of losing draws from Age 2. But I was not happy to see it, because he also takes the strength from Saladin, so now he's up to friggin' 12! So now it's very, very stressful. Here's the uncertain borders. I lose a yellow token. Parsley grabs the iron, researches it, and upgrades 1 mine and 2 mines. Now, that surprised me a bit. I thought he was not going to do this because it's so late in Age 1. But, you know, a good action now is better than the best action later. Doing this now, you end up getting more rocks overall than if you wait for coal. So that's his whole turn. I think it's a fine turn, and it's over to me. What am I going to do about the strength situation as Age 2 starts? Well, I decide to play an event. We get some science, and there's really no way for me to get safe, so I just have to suck it up and deal with it. So what I did was I took the Bread and Circus, researched it, and built one. Obviously not what I want to be doing when I'm trying to save up for Code of Laws. But the way I saw it is, you know, I need to just do something productive this turn that fixes my happy faces. It gives me a little bit of strength. And now that the legions have come into the common tactic pool, I can make a warrior. Oh, I'd actually choose. I could have taken Legion. I choose not to, however. Right, because I'd rather draw the cards. I'd rather draw the cards and have a chance of getting an H2 defense card than getting 1 more strength and then still being 5 strength away from David. If I could have gotten to be 4 strength away, that would have been different. 4 strength away, this defense card is fine. But 5 strength away is probably going to go for an aggression, because with 5 strength difference, I would need 2 defense cards, and that's asking for a bit of a lot. So I end my turn, really hoping to draw a defense card. I don't. Really hoping that David didn't get an aggression from the Colossus draw, but he does, and it's a plunder, so he steals 5 rocks. Absolutely horrifying. Just a horrifying turn of events here in this game as H2 starts. He grabs the Alchemy, makes an upgrade, makes another upgrade. That's 3 of his turns. Then he takes the Urban Growth and researches Theology, so he's got this ready to fix his happy faces and make this next worker a productive one. Alright, we're over to Parsley. He plays an event. It's rats. I lose a ton of food. I wish David had stolen my food, because then that would have, like, when it happened, I was like, oh, yay, I got to keep all 5 of my food, woo! But then the rats came, so of course I wish David had stolen some of it, but alas, he did not. He stole none. So this is horrifying. Just an absolutely like, oh my god, I should just give up. This game is going to be third place kind of a situation here. Parsley needs to fix his science, and he pays the extra action compared to alchemy to grab the scientific method. He upgrades a mine, and then he upgrades a farm. So the extra action, I think, is worth it, because yes, he could have done the alchemy this turn, but he had other things he was doing this turn, so I think this was a very fine line, and now he's going to have 2 Age 1 production techs, and then also the scientific method for endgame science. Alright, so it's my turn. I play an event, and we get science. Now, I put the Suez Canal under construction. It's a little bit frisky, but I decide, hey, I gotta spend my rocks, and yes, I can get hit by another aggression, but you know, I never got irrigation. Who knows when selective breeding is coming? Who knows if I'm even gonna have science for it? The inhabited territory would be really, really nice to have just for the extra yellow tokens. Remember also that I lost a yellow token from uncertain borders. I build the first stage, and that's just my whole turn. I do then copy the Legion tactic this time. Not entirely sure why I did it this time, not last time, but pass the turn, hope to draw a defense card, and I don't. I hope that David doesn't have another aggression or a war, and he does not. He plays an event. We get the barbarians, nothing. Oh, no, this is not nothing. Parsley is losing a population for this, so I was very happy by whoever put that in there. I can't remember if it was me. He gets the irrigation down, makes 1 farm, makes a 2nd farm, so his food is fixed. Then he grabs the frugality for even more workers, and gets that temple upgrade, so his next worker will be productive. So it's over to Parsley, plays an event, we get the rebellion, nothing happens. He grabs Newton, very instructive moment here. The Newton, not the most popular leader that I see coming out a lot in the tournament games, but here, with the Theocracy and only 5 actions, it's going to be very limiting very soon. Newton is basically an extra action per turn as long as you research 1 tech per turn, which admittedly is not always possible, but sometimes you get more, so an extra action is roughly a way that you can see it, and the nice thing about Newton is that he has an ability that helps you make advantage of his other ability. So the extra action thing is benefited by the fact that he makes extra science himself. Now, he can't quite get that online right away, so he also takes an urban growth to help in the future, and the rifleman to upgrade his warriors for extra flat strength. Solid, clean turn here. And it's over to me. I was very happy that selective breeding is here. I get the Code of Laws down. I build the Suez Canal. I get the inhabited territory, though I did think about the strategic territory. And then I take the selective breeding. I will have just enough science to get this next turn and start getting more workers. Again, I hold my breath to see if David's going to do an aggression, and he does not. He plays an event. It's Knowledge of the Ancients, free science for all. He grabs Napoleon, which is not the end of the world, because Saladin was already being used for strength, and right now Napoleon is just giving 2 strength, so strength does not increase. He raises population, grabs coal because he desperately needs to fix his rocks, and then he passes the turn. So I heave a sigh of relief because he's not getting knights down. That would have been very annoying. It's a little bit strange watching a Age 2 breakthrough fall off the row, but, he had priorities, and so we go over to Parsley. So Parsley plays Newton. It's time to let go of Nostradamus' protection. He researches the scientific method as a free action, upgrades once, raises population, makes the knights, and builds a knight. So he's attending to the strength difference between himself and David. He also grabs some reserves and a frugality. So interestingly, he chooses not to get 2 extra science here. It's tough to say if that's correct or not. I also think efficient upgrade would have made sense instead of frugality. Or instead of, what did he do? He took reserves for 2 actions. I do believe he ends up doing this for rocks. So in that case, you could say in retrospect, it would have made more sense to get the efficient upgrade and either one of these other technologies, or maybe not the organized religion because he has St. Peter's, but maybe like upgrade a farm. Because if you end up spending reserves for rocks, efficient upgrade could have been also 3 rocks, but you save an action with it when you play it, and you save an action with it when you take it. But maybe he was thinking playing reserve for food and then do frugality and raise a couple of populations. And it just didn't turn out that way. But we'll see. So it's my turn. I get Robespierre, and there's the Republic right here. So that's one of the biggest dopamine hits you can get in this game, is Robespierre in the Republic. Get your actions fixed. I also take the Rifleman because the other copy is gone and I desperately need this to keep up with strength. So it does mean holding off on the selective breeding. I take the journalism and I take the urban growth. I could have researched selective breeding and upgraded one farm, but I'm trying to follow the principle of immediacy here. I don't need food right now. I already have a worker right now. And if I do this, I don't have enough for Rifleman next turn. And I do need the Rifleman because if David makes another military push, I need the option to get this, 6 extra raw strength. All right, so David's up, plays an event. No aggressions, very happy. We all get some rocks. David gets the least. I was very happy about that. He researches coal. He makes a coal person. Notice the deposits don't help him get an extra coal or anything. He researches the knights, and he does get a knight for 4 extra strength. Then he takes the frugality and the engineering genius. No tactics or anything, so still just the legion. But now there's a 9 strength difference here. So how is Parsley going to handle that? Well, he researches the rifleman. So he's got just enough science to do it. Upgrades once, upgrades twice. He then upgrades the other lab, and notice that if this had been an efficient upgrade, he could have just done it. He upgrades his final warrior as well, grabs architecture, grabs the wave, and the breakthrough. So this could still be a food in the future, so it could still make more sense that he took this over the efficient upgrade, and he passes the turn. All right, so over to me, and I decide to build Harvard College. I'm feeling a little frisky here. I have 23 rocks somehow, so I just take it and I just build it. I am passing off on the selective breeding for a bit here, but I figured getting my science fixed was really, really valuable. I then researched the rifleman myself because of the strength difference, and even having just built the wonder in one turn, I still have enough rocks left over to upgrade all 3 rifles and be safe from David's shenanigans. All right, so David's up, plays an event. And then one thing I'm not safe for is pestilence. So if we take a look at what's happening here, David has to lose a population. Parsley has to lose a population. And I am the one lucky person with an idle worker. So actually, I was wrong. That commentary was a misfire. I actually was safe from pestilence in a way, and then my opponents get hit hard by it. So that was a fortunate turn. Okay, so David loses a mine for the pestilence, grabs rich land, grabs the upgrade, grabs cannons, because he needs to get that final military tech, and then he upgrades the other coal mine. So he's still making 6, though I'm sure he'd rather be making 7. And he has the rich land here to help build another coal mine if needed. And he passes the turn. So Parsley's up, he plays the reserves for food, so that was a long-term thing, or he does use it for food. He plays the frugality, and you'll notice that he used pestilence to lose a farm. He lost an age A farm, and that's a bold line. I thought for sure he was going to rebuild that farm, but Parsley makes a very interesting line here. After raising his population, I beg your pardon. I'm thinking of something that happened later this game. Okay, he doesn't do anything crazy this turn. He does in fact rebuild the farm, as one might expect. So he basically lost just 2 rocks from the pestilence, and then he also makes a knight. So we wonder, does he have the classic army? He takes the revolutionary idea. No classic army yet, and he passes the turn. All right, so for me, I grabbed the cannon. It's a toss-up whether to take cannon or cavalry. I figure cannon because there's 2 tactics in H3 that work off of the rifles and the cannon, and only 1 for rifles and horses. So that was how I made my judgment. But I decided, I take both of them here. Never mind. If I had to pick one, I would have taken cannon, but I decided to take both. I already have the warfare, so I don't need to take the strategy. Finally, the time has come to research selective breeding and upgrade both farmers, and I even have an action left thanks to being the action king over here, and I grabbed the scientific method to maybe even further improve my science. However, I think this with journalism is a little bit strange. On the other hand, there wasn't really anything else for me to do because none of these cards actually matter. So I pass the turn, and we go over to David. All right, we're into H3. We'll take a look at the standings once David finishes his turn. He plays an event, and there's the foray, which is very sad to not be part of. So he uses the frugality, raises his population twice, builds that final coal mine, so he also makes up for the pestilence. He grabs the strategy, and he makes it, so he's getting a little bit ahead again, and he has plenty of military actions, which makes sense because if you look at the standings here, Parsley's really running away with the culture here. Not a huge amount of culture production, and this is definitely surmountable with a big push in H3. But he's got a big lead, and he has no weaknesses. His civilization is totally fine in every respect, except for actions. But even the actions are a little better than they look, because Newton's giving him an extra action every time he researches. And now that he's got the science built up, he can actually cash out maybe more than 1 extra action per turn for a little bit here. So David takes a reasonable line here, as he is behind on science and culture, but he has tons of military actions, so maybe he can get catch up with the military. Parsley plays an event. It's refugees, which is really heartbreaking because I was going to get out of this situation soon, but here I lose a population and 3 culture. He researches the architecture, grabs opera, researches opera, makes a worker, and an opera. So he spent this turn getting his cultural lead pushed even further, grabs some patriotism, and then he plays the revolutionary idea for science for next turn. So I was really impressed by his play because theocracy, normally you think, okay, if you get this early, you're kind of stuck on it. And he's not even necessarily stuck on it because he could just make a temple and with St. Peter's Basilica be totally fine on happy faces. But he's making it work with 5 actions here going into age 3. So in my turn, I raise population, I research journalism, and I make a journalist. I figure I need the culture as well as the science, otherwise I would have just gone for the scientific method. And you'll notice that for the refugees, I lost a lab. I just couldn't afford to lose my production technologies, but yeah, I was not happy about losing the lab. I grab patriotism and reserves and revolutionary idea, just taking yellow cards here as the action king so that I can keep up on military if David makes a big push. My plan here was, I don't know if I really had a plan, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not in really great shape to do a military thing because I'm lacking the actions for it. But maybe if I get a good tactic, as you can see, I haven't. I could get one or both of these techs down and do a war at some point. All right, I get the modern army, which is 2 rifles, a horse, and a cannon. So that could be useful if I actually get enough workers to make it functional at some point. David plays an event. It's Ravages of Time, so Parsley does have to lose St. Peter's Basilica. David probably makes out the best losing the Colossus, actually getting 2 culture, and I get an extra culture from the library, but I am sad about losing the science. This is a big deal, because Parsley loses Basilica, he gets nothing for it. Basilica already made 2 culture, so he's losing all his happy faces. So what happens is David builds a temple, grabs the computers, makes a warrior, which is interesting, and he puts the fast food chains under construction. I guess this was just to avoid corruption. And now he's got his wonder. He's got 9 rocks per turn, so he's going to at least make up some of the culture deficit with this wonder at some point. So now, what is Parsley going to do, having lost the St. Peter's Basilica to Ravages of Time? The very reason why I would have been afraid to build that as my first wonder. Well, here he plays an event. It's Politics of Strength, so that sucks because I was about to fix this very soon. But now I lost a population and 3 culture and a card draw. Parsley, after losing the happy faces, blows up his age 1 farm. He then grabs Pro Sports, which conveniently is there, researches it, and builds one. Now you might think, why lose a farm? Me, I would have probably lost a mine. I just can't imagine losing a farm here with no mechanized agriculture in sight, and now you're losing food every turn. This is a very, very bold play. He grabs reserves so he can make more food if needed, and he passes the turn. So for me, I play an event, we get the prosperity. I maybe Parsley put it in there, and if so, Parsley knew that it was coming. So Parsley has the 6 happy faces, so that is how I think he was able to control losing that farm. By getting the Pro Sports, knowing that this was coming, and blowing up a farm, he knew that he was going to get enough food to tide him over until he could fix his food situation. Okay, I grab the communism with Robespierre still. I can actually revolt into it for 1 science. The happy face loss is annoying, as it usually is, but I can raise population and build a bread and circus. Now, I decide to grab Einstein and play him, so I'm getting extra science, and of course extra culture for researching stuff. Note that this turn I did research the communism, but of course I had to have Robespierre on for that, and I still got 3 culture for it, so there's no switching to Einstein before that research. And then I grabbed the patriotism to, maybe have this pipe dream alive of getting more military. In retrospect, maybe reserves would have been better. And then I passed the turn. So now I do have the military actions and the science and the rocks. Not quite the people, but I do have most of the components needed to build up a big army and do a war. I just need to draw a war over culture, which I haven't yet. So Cold War, very sad. I miss out on this as well. My opponents get a bunch of science. David uses it to get some cannons down, makes a cannon. He researches computers, upgrades to a computer, and again. And then he does have a better tactic. He plays the mobile artillery. All right, so now Parsley's up. He grabs democracy here, researches it, so he gets off of theocracy. Now that he has pro sports, he raises population for 5 thanks to prosperity, makes another opera, grabs the reserves, and Ian, and computers. So me, I would have been very scared to stay at a farm and be losing food. But he's got the reserves to get him out of the jam if needed, and he can still potentially pick up the copy of Mechanized Agriculture. He does have the classic army, so he plays it now to be safe from David and to threaten me, and he passes the turn. Now here I grab Space Flight, and it may seem a little bit strange considering Manhattan Project is right here, and I do need the strength. And maybe I would have been better off this game taking the Manhattan Project. Because if I could have gotten this 13 strength and drawn a war, then with the modern army and the cannon and the cavalry, I could potentially have pulled off something pretty big. And maybe even been able to take down Parsley's lead. But here, I made a decision I'm not proud of, which is to go for second place. I thought, you know what, there's just no way I'm catching up. There's no guarantee I'm drawing a war. And I might as well just take Space Flight to counter David's fast food chains and just try to beat David, which isn't even a guarantee from this perspective. Looking back, I do think that was a mistake. Because even though Parsley has his actions fixed, and even though he's got, a very strong civilization, he is taking this line where he's not making food, so his workers could dry up. And when you're behind, take risks. Parsley is the leader of the group. It is very, very important to beat him. It's going to be extremely difficult to beat him if I don't win this game. If he wins, even if I get second place, as we'll see, it's basically impossible for me to end up winning the group. So you got to play to your outs. I think I needed to take the project, just assume I was going to get a war over culture, and if I lose, then I lose. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I get second or third place here. If I get even second to Parsley's first, it's all over for my life in the tournament. So I had to take the project. I think looking back, this was actually my number one biggest mistake, was which wonder I took from the row here. But we grabbed the space flight. I researched the cannon. I researched the cavalry. I make a worker. I disband a rifle, which I'm not happy about. But the thing is that with this, I can actually put the modern army now, be the strongest. Of course, now that 4 awesome strength-based events have rolled by, don't have to worry about that anymore, and I still get 2 draws to try to get a war over culture. So now I do get a war over culture, and you can imagine if I had the Manhattan Project with 14 rocks, I could actually have built it and declared a war. Or, built it and waited and gone for a bigger war. But as it is, what happens is that David plays an event. It's the historic territory. He wins it with just 1 worker and a bunch of cards. He raises population, makes another cannon, raises population, makes another knight. So he's still pushing those mobile artilleries. He grabs the engineering, researches it, and the urban growth. So he is ready to roll, building the fast food chains. It's over to Parsley. So Parsley plays an event. It's National Pride. Note, by the way, he already has taken Fleming. So there was no concern about him taking Gandhi and shutting out my wars that way. National Pride, of course, not the event I want to be seeing at this point, and now that I'm the second strongest player. He builds the Manhattan Project, grabs the multimedia for more culture with Ian later, plays the reserves for rocks, and just gets it done. So now he's got 13 strength instead of me. So if you think about it, that's like a 26 strength difference. Whether I get 13 ahead of him or he gets 13 ahead of me with this, with the choice of who gets this wonder. He grabs the rockets. He plays the reserves for food because he's still bleeding food, and he passes the turn. So you can see his strategy pretty clearly here. He's a bit vulnerable with this lack of food situation, but he has a big cultural lead, and he's safe. He can just focus entirely on strength now, and he'll be completely fine this game thanks to the Manhattan Project. So on my turn, what do? Well, I play an event. We get the vast territory popping up. I don't go for it. Parsley wins it. Very helpful for him because he does need the workers. And now I grab the movies. I research movies. I make a worker. I build a movie so I get my culture going. And then I take the engineering genius to help with the wonder later, as well as the endowment for the arts. In retrospect, this ends up not working out so great. I was already planning to do War on David the following turn. So you might argue, well, then when is this actually going to get played? It's only going to be worth 3 points. Maybe taking an actual rock thing would have made more sense. But I needed an air force in order to declare war on David. They're both in the deck. It was overwhelmingly likely one would come out, but maybe if it came out in my opponent's turn and they paid 3 actions for it, something like that. You know, I didn't know for sure that I would get the airplane I needed to be able to declare war on him. So that's why I took this endowment. But in retrospect, maybe rocks would have been better, although it ends up probably not being a huge deal either way. Okay, no more wars, just the one still. David plays an event. It's freedom of movement. Always interesting to see what people do with this one. He moves a swordsman to cannon, which is very efficient because he's using a tactic that doesn't involve swords. He gets Steve Jobs, which is basically the last leader that he could get other than Marlene, but he doesn't have movies. Both movies are gone. So Marlene would just be for the extra worker, and he decides, okay, let's get Steve Jobs, which actually gives me some culture. He plays Steve Jobs, gets tanks, researches it, gets the 4 points from Steve, and he uses up the engineering genius 2 before it falls out of his hand with the age ending and grabs the satellites. He upgrades a knight, disbands a sword, makes another cannon, so now he has a mobile artillery, or 2 mobile artillery, and with the mechanized army, he has 1 up-to-date one and 1 that is antiquated. So now Parsley's up, plays an event. It's impact of balance, which is actually kind of good for me, so it catches me up a little bit. He grabs the air forces, researches it, makes a worker twice. He also plays the patriotism and the wave because now he's behind, and he builds that airplane for free along with the knight that he needed to make up for the colony. And then he grabs his mechanized agriculture finally and researches multimedia as a free action with Newton. This allows him to now replace Newton with Ian and grab revolutionary idea. So he is giving up 2 science for this, but he's also saving an action later, perfectly reasonable turn, and getting a couple of culture. So it's over to me, and even though this looks like a pretty big difference, I'm 9 behind, I calculated this very, 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 very carefully, and because Marlene is no longer accessible to David, I decided it was actually safe to do the war over culture. So I grabbed the air forces, which did importantly show up. I play it, I make a worker, and I just, with the patriotisms, couple of them, blow up a farm and make 2 airplanes. Or actually an airplane and a cavalry? Interesting. Oh, right, because I'm blowing up my lab and making another cannon. I was really close. Really close. I didn't quite have the actions or the rocks to making another rifle. So having had to disband a rifle earlier to make my modern army is significant because another rifle here, that would have been worth, 3 plus 13 is 16 strength. So you could say, well, Boris, hold on a minute. You couldn't have built all these armies and also gotten Manhattan Project online. And that's true. But you'll notice that the cannon, the horse, and the rifle, they're just raw strength. That's just 9. And the Manhattan Project, for those same 15 rocks, would have been 13. So it wouldn't have been the full 13 value, you could say, but perhaps if I had gone all in on it more, it may have been possible for me to squeeze a little bit of extra strength out. And if I had that and Parsley didn't, this war could have actually been on Parsley. Because if Parsley had 35 strength instead of 48, then I could absolutely have declared this war on him instead of on David. Now, maybe he would have played his turns differently, but then again, maybe also he wouldn't have been able to push culture as aggressively if I had had the Manhattan Project. But as it is, with Parsley being at 48, this was not a safe war. He could easily just, build an airplane and a rifle, and then there it is. That's 8 raw strength, and he's got me beat. So instead of feeding him culture, I stole a little bit from David. Now we pass the turn. It is critical that he doesn't have access to Marlene, because actually just having Marlene for an extra worker would have been a big deal. Because if he had Marlene, then he could have made a tank, and then, or would just with Marlene, he could have upgraded this horse to a tank, and then he would have had 2 up-to-date. Oh, hang on a second. Bang & Barn, let me do the math here. He already could upgrade this knight to have 2 up-to-date things. Right. He could upgrade the knight, and then, I had his all planned before I recorded this. Maybe Marlene didn't matter as much as I thought, because how does he... Right. If he takes Marlene and makes 2 cannons for 10 rocks, there it is. He finally figured it out, folks. Okay, if he makes 2 cannons for 10 rocks with Marlene, what's happening is this. He has an out-of-date army, and then with the 2 extra cannons, 2 up-to-date ones, because the 2 cannons plus the shadow tank count as an up-to-date army. So that would give him an extra 6 strength for the 2 cannons, plus 10 for an up-to-date army, which is 16, and that goes up to 53. And then he researches satellites and goes up to 56. So he could have actually beaten me by 1 if he could have taken Marlene. But without Marlene, I checked all the permutations, whether he like upgrades this or builds this. And what it ends up happening is there's no way that he can actually get up to 55. So he is just losing to me no matter what, even with the satellites. And I figured he wasn't actually going to go all in, because if he can't beat me, there's no point giving up the fast food chains. He needs 12 rocks next turn to build this. He's going to have a total of 19. So he only has 7 rocks to work with. And I judged that since he couldn't beat me, he wasn't going to push as hard as he could. And this would give me a pretty decent war. So he researches the satellites. He upgrades the horse to a tank. Now he's got 5 rocks left over, plus 9 is 14. So he's only got 2 rocks to spare. He blows up a temple, and he makes a warrior for exactly those 2 rocks. He grabs the mechanized agriculture, grabs the pro sports, and then he passes the turn. So now it's over to Parsley, plays an event. It's impact of architecture, which is a bit better for him than for me and for David. He blows up a mine, makes a library, which is giving him 6 huge culture. He researches the mechanized agriculture finally and upgrades 1 with just enough rocks to save his food situation from famine. And then he plays the revolutionary idea, researches the computers for laughs, grabs tanks, and efficient upgrade and calls it a day. So you'll notice what happens here. I steal 11 culture from David. So I get 11 points versus Parsley. But if I had stolen from Parsley, I would have had 22 points against him. Now I play an event. It's the colonies, which is kind of a nothing burger since we all got 1. And it's time to build the space flight. So I play reserves for rocks. I build 3 stages, thank God for engineering genius, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to build the last stage. I play the endowment for the arts. Note, by the way, that it didn't matter that I played this after building the wonder. Obviously, I could have just played it first, but I was already ahead of David by a lot after the war, so the endowment was only ever going to be 3 points. I blow up a rifleman, and that's just to stop revolt, and then my turn ends. So David gets the pro sports, gets the mechanized agriculture, builds the fast food chains, and with raising his population, he actually can build a pro sports with engineering for free, and then we end. So going into the final scoring here, I'm weirdly not that far behind Parsley. Now, part of that, admittedly, is that I did build a 23-point space flight. So had I built the Manhattan Project, I would have gotten, 7 points. So I would have gotten 16 fewer points. And that would have eaten into some of the value that I got from the Manhattan Project, stealing culture from Parsley. But I still think that if if you take 13 strength away from Parsley, we'll never know for sure. We'll never know for sure. But I believe that if you take 13 strength away from Parsley, I can declare war on him, I can steal culture from him, and he would lose culture because he would have needed to attend to his military enough to not get totally wiped out. And he wouldn't have been able to just do this. Now, maybe if I had the Manhattan Project, he would have had to devote so much to military, he would have stopped me from being able to declare war at all. And then I just wouldn't have been able to catch up to him on culture without the space flight. So it's possible I would have lost anyway, but I think that with taking space flight in that situation, my odds of beating Parsley essentially became 0. And with the Manhattan Project, going back to that moment in time, my odds were not 0. And I needed to go for the not 0 chance of beating him, even if it ends up being failure. If I had taken Manhattan Project and ultimately lost this game, then I still would have thought it was correct to take it over spaceflight, because going back to that moment, even if you know that you're losing the game with the Manhattan Project, you can still go back to that moment and say, yeah, if I take spaceflight, it is absolutely not going to be a win instead. But in any case, we go to the events. Impact of Progress is not the greatest. David catches up a little bit to me on that one, and I don't catch up on Parsley. Impact of Competition, though, that one is good. I get 5 points against Parsley, so I'm creeping up here. We get the Impact of Culture. Parsley must have put that in, so that gives him 7 points against me. There's also Impact of Strength, which is a little sad that I didn't win. I was off by 1 from blowing up that rifle to stop the revolt. And maybe, I could have played around it and blown up something. I had civil actions left over. I could have blown up something else to stop the revolt. But the thing is that it's possible that David put that in last because he was beating me by 1. And if I had kept the rifle, he just wouldn't have played it at all. So in a way, it may look bad, but it actually is good, I think, because this does just give me 7 points against Parsley. And then the final event is Harmony, which is better for Parsley than for me. But you'll see that I am, 16 points away from him. So it's possible. It wasn't as, completely unwinnable at that moment that I took Spaceflight, or even maybe a moment earlier, when I said, I'm just playing for second place here. I don't think it was unwinnable at that point. Even with me taking Einstein and not really even pursuing military as much as I could have, maybe by waiting for Marlene, let's say, still ended up coming pretty close. But as it is, Parsley wins. And Parsley also, by the way, please like, subscribe, thanks so much for watching this video. Parsley also won his game against David and Rove, which I was really hoping he wouldn't. But because he did, if we take a look at the standings here, as you can see, what's happening going into the 2-player games is that Parsley is exactly 8 points ahead of me. Even though I did very well in the 3s, Parsley sadly did equally well. I was really hoping for one of those things, which you see pretty oftenly when you look around the groups, is oftentimes someone does great in the 4-player games and kind of falls apart in the 3s. I was really hoping that would happen. I did my part, almost, but Parsley also did very well in the 3s. And now, 8 points is a very significant number to be behind. Because if I win 3 games, and Parsley wins just 1, he still beats me, because he beats me on tie breaks. He beat me in both 4-player games, and he also beat me in one of the 3-player games. That's the 3 head-to-head games that he needed to beat me on tie breaks no matter what happens here. So at this point, the only way that I get to stay in the tournament is if I win all 3 2-player games, which is not remotely guaranteed, and if Parsley loses all 3 of his games. That has to happen, which is extremely unlikely, especially because Rove and David have obviously no chance of winning. In fact, at this point, they don't have a chance even of getting... I could be wrong about this. I don't think they even have a chance of getting second. If one of them were to win all 3 of their games... Rove, I beat him in both 4-player games and both 3-player games. David, I'm beating both of them on tie breaks because I beat both of them in both 3-player games and in one of the 4-player games. So I have 3 wins head-to-head against each of them. So even if I lose all 3 of my 2-player games and they win all 3 of, and one of them wins all 3 of their 2-player games, they would tie me and I would still win on tie breaks. So they don't even have a chance of getting second. So that might mean that going into the final part of the tournament, their discretionary effort that they're applying to the games might be a little bit lower. They might not be trying as hard as possible. So the odds of both of them beating Parsley and also me beating Parsley, that alone is very, very small. So at this point, it's over. Now, this is why I made the ominous comment in the previous video about that 1 point. Rove was 1 point away from tying Parsley for this second place game here, where I beat him in the 3s. If that had been a tie, then they would have split the 2 points instead of whatever getting both of them. Then whatever would have been at 23 instead of 24. And that 1 point could make a big difference. Because if whatever's at 23 instead of 24, then now, if I win all 3 games, whatever Parsley has to win 2 games in order to be ahead of me. So that is a lot easier to accomplish, because if I beat him, then he only has 2 games to play. So he would basically have to win all the games that aren't against me in order to beat me, assuming, of course, I win all 3 games, which is a really wild assumption. Even then, it would still be a long shot. So maybe I overhyped it a little bit. Basically, that 1 point makes the difference between me staying in the tournament being a long shot and me staying in the tournament being basically impossible. But thank you very much for watching. I will be doing the 2-player games. They're actually all kind of wrapping up. I may take a little break here because if I'm being honest, I'm playing a lot of Star Vaders and I definitely want to keep that video series going. So maybe next week we'll come back and take a look at the 2-player games and see how the tournament concludes. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Again, please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.